What do you get when you combine a gremlin obsessed with poison, an international grid manipulator, and a really sad girl? A ruined life. And a monetized video about it. So today, we're talking about one of the Apothecary Diaries' most haunting arcs, when Lishu, the most controversial yet deeply layered character in the series, meets her worst nightmare. A person who understands her completely, only to destroy her from the inside. This is a 5-step breakdown of psychological manipulation, how it preys on fragile minds, and why Lishu's story might be the most disturbing case story hidden in plain sight. Quick note before we continue. This video took way longer than it should have. About 2 months actually. As I mentioned in the video last week, my mental health took a pretty hard nosedive around November 2025. I got diagnosed with a major depressive disorder and all that fun stuff. So yeah, that happened. Which is also why this video might feel a bit bipolar, I guess. One moment it's energetic because I recorded it like 2 months ago, and then suddenly, boop, heavy. But honestly, my biggest fear right now is not uploading at all. So I decided to just process this on out as fast as I could and put it out. Because the meat of the video is already there. The research is there, even if the editing gets a little questionable. As for now, quick update, I am relatively fine. Still crawling. Still feel pretty bad about my rather selfish video last week, but I'm fine in general. Okay, back to the video. I often get disappointed when people recommend me so-called psychological anime. Best case, it's another social anxiety simulator. But the worst case, it's sweaty boys on a PowerPoint presentation screaming about ego, while not getting anything right about ego. Great. So, when the series plays deep on the actual technical term on psychology, I'm in. But the wildest part about this story, in the Apothecary Diaries, the most intense psychological war, it doesn't even involve Mama or Jinshi. It's between side characters. One of them is the virtuous consort, Lady Lishu, as the victim. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised at this point. Like, this character, it feels like the author Nachi Hyuga went, how far can we push modern viewers' moral discomfort and still get away with it? That's Lishu in a nutshell. But before we get into the main topic, I want to refresh you a bit, express style, about Lishu from the anime, and also adding some important information from the novel. I'm really sorry to tell you this, but after the events in the anime, Lishu's life is not getting better soon. Look, we know that Lishu is cursed. In episode 6, she was 14, but she's been made the Emperor's concubine twice. There are reasons, of course. 1, politics, but also because 2, her father hated her guts. He believed that Lishu is not his biological daughter. And oh yeah, Lishu's older sister also hated her. Surprise! But then, knowing her family condition, the current emperor swooped in, accepted her back to the inner court for good intention, because the emperor actually adored her, not in a weird way, but her weird and shameful circumstances, she became an easy target, even by her own attendants. So that's 5+ years of mistreatment, emotional isolation for things outside her control. Let's keep that in mind. But it doesn't stop there. Not even close, because this video is about her when she meets her natural predator, a human parasite feeding on fragile minds. So what's going on here? Without giving too much spoiler, the story started in Volume 6. Lishu returns from the western capital. You see, when the consort's been away from the palace from some time, they can't just waltz back in. Women that wanna enter the inner court have to prove that they're still menstruating. It's basically the palace security against surprise heirs. The problem is, Lishu isn't exactly the embodiment of health. I'm sure you're aware of this. She's young, she's really stressed, and just came back from a 2-month trip. So her period's late. Not great, but nothing too suspicious. It's just natural, you know? Except, someone decides to weaponize that. Her ex-chief lady-in-waiting, this absolute witch, she told everyone and their mother that she found a love letter from Lishu to another man, not the emperor. And as usual, Lishu couldn't do anything about it. So Lishu detained in an old, unused tower for infidelity. But the real problem, aside from being afraid, is that she's not alone in that tower. So imagine this. Lishu was locked on the 3rd floor of that old tower, and right above her on the 4th, there was someone else. A woman who introduced herself as Sote. She's a snake, okay? Like the worst kind of snake. Her manipulation's so precise, it feels studied, like something straight out of a real-life con artist playbook. You can almost picture Nachiuga, the author of the Apothecary Diaries, just studying real-life manipulator psychology tactics and writing fire based on it. Props to the author, honestly, because Sote's interaction with Lishu feels so authentic. And over the next 5 points, you will see just how sophisticated, meta, and terrifying Lishu and Sote's conversation really was. So let's start with how Lishu and Sote actually interacted, because they weren't face to face most of the time. They actually talked through a broken ceiling and the pipe between them. So Sote had literally smashed through the floor just to start talking to Lishu. But what's more important now is how Sote introduced herself to Lishu. So Sote introduced herself as a girl around Lishu's age, also detained inside the tower because of something beyond her control. So basically, same age, same misery. You can already feel how convenient this setup is from the get-go. But what's fascinating is how fast it made the two of them bonded. This Sote was talkative, she was funny, she was really attentive, just a really good girl overall. She remembered Lishu's allergies to seafood. She also mirrored her speech constantly, like saying, "Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah, there's really nothing to do here." Another example is like when Lishu mentioned Sote's sharp hearing, Sote also responded, "Yeah, I guess my hearing's pretty good." If I were Lishu, that would have felt like hearing an angel through a glowy hole. Like, remember, this girl was bullied by her own attendants, so for once, in the middle of the thickening plot, someone was actually kind to her. Which is great and all for Lishu, like, hey, good for you, but that's exactly the problem. Let's call this step 1, too kind, too quick. It's like love bombing, but with politeness instead of perviness. Look, when someone suddenly remembers every tiny detail of you, it feels special, I know. But sometimes you shouldn't be impressed by the speed of connection. Remember that the fast lane of attentiveness and compassion never comes naturally. Now, of course, that doesn't mean Lishu should become the stereotypical r/career vice dwellers, cutting off everyone who's been nice to her. Yeah, okay, Sasuke, we get it, you're cool. Because honestly, that's just internet bias. I mean, Jinchi was nice to her, Adu also nice, Gyokyu was nice to her, heck, even Mama was nice to her. You see, in this case, the point isn't to assume the worst in everyone, but to recognize that it's unnatural to be that attentive. It takes practice and habituation to act like that, but it doesn't always mean it's malicious. I also do it sometimes because I want to build a great first impression to some people. Doesn't mean that I'm going to scam everyone, but sometimes it is for malicious purposes. How did Lishu respond to this? She opened up. With surprising speed, the pressure of being convicted, being locked up, it all added too much stress for clear thinking. But if you ask me how bad that decision was, well, I don't know, because Lishu back then definitely needed more clues. Luckily, she soon found one. Feeling that they'd grown close, so they decided to push things forward. She started talking about the tower, the pagoda, where they were both trapped. You see, from the outside, it looked like it had 10 stories, but above the 4th floor, it was practically unusable. No one had gone there for decades, and since there were no guards, no one would stop them from going up. So, Sote made an offer. "Hey, wanna go to the upper floors? We can see the whole capital from up there." It's a kind of line that sounds really innocent and tempting, and it's not like Lishu had other things to do, you know. Lishu wanted to say yes, but she didn't eventually. And of course, Sote didn't stop there, and she went full honey trap mode. "Oh, I just wish you can see the view from up there. I wish I could share it with you." Now, from here, I can already hear your minds. Here it is, huh? This is what the people in the FBI called rescue merchants. Look, the previous part was still ambiguous on the actual danger part because you can't just blame people for being nice. But now, added with all them honeypots, When someone shows up at the perfect time with the perfect solution, maybe they are the problem, you know? Think of it like gacha games, for example. They give you the pain, they sell you the cure through really expensive gambling. So as of now, it has become really obvious that something sketchy was happening to Lishu. But what about Lishu's response to that? So the most optimum way to face Sote is to at least keep Sote at arm's length without hostility. Don't initiate interaction first, be careful about favors, debts, and other things that can tie Lishu to her. But for Lishu, it's so hard to say no to that, especially to someone who listens, offers a bit of escape. But luckily, she had an excuse, her lady-in-waiting, Kanan. Kanan is that girl who dealt with Mama once, and at that time, she was the only one still loyal to Lishu. So Lishu told Sote she couldn't leave because Kanan would notice her right away. But the question is, how did Sote react to that though? Not well. Sote, being the social engineering demon she is, started aiming her words towards Kanan. But she didn't attack Kanan directly, she used the vagueness of the situation to her advantage, saying things like, "Oh, are you worried what she'd think about it? Her, an attendant who leaves you alone while she enjoys being free of this tower?" She pointed how Kanan was taking too long when delivering Lishu's food, something that was true, though Lishu didn't know why, and how Kanan always seemed to change her clothes between visits. The image was clear. Your only ally is actually enjoying her freedom while you rot here. So that's the move. Isolate the target. And it usually works because of two things. First, it smells like intimacy and trust. Hey, this is just between us, okay? It's us against the world. It's manipulative, but it feels like connection. And second, it's way easier to deceive one person than two. The logic is simple. If Kanan knew about Sote, she'd obviously think it was sketchy as hell. Yeah, sure, talk to the random voice above the ceiling through a rusty pipe. Totally safe, 100%. Look, even Kanan, who wasn't exactly a genius, would never approve. So Sote's best move is to keep Lishu's secret communication a secret. In fairness, Sote's insinuations worked because Kanan was acting strange. She really did take long delivering meals and she did show up in different outfits. From Lishu's perspective, it looked suspicious. But from clearer minds, we can totally see other options. It's more likely that Kanan had her own struggles, probably being bullied, or trying to make sure Lishu's food wasn't tampered with. But the point is, it's easy to twist something when your target's already stressed and depressed. Still, Sote's lines hit where it hurts. Every word makes Lishu's fate crack a little more. And now comes the classic scammer tactic, urgency. So when Sote tempted Lishu to go upstairs, she also added a countdown, if you will. She slipped it into Lishu through a well-hidden double-meaning sentences. Take a look at this sentence, for example. "I wish you could see the view from up here. Look, if you ever change your mind, just come on up. Tell your lady-in-waiting to take half a day off. That should be plenty." They also changed the guards at... You see, at first glance, it's just more of that rescue merchant act we talked about earlier. But hidden inside those lines are actually time cues and action triggers. Tell your lady-in-waiting to take half a day off. It can be easily translated into, "We only have half a day to pull this off." Oh, they changed the guards at this time. Means that's our window. So she's planning the idea that the opportunity is both rare and fleeting. This is classic marketing psychology. Urgency builds compliance. Look, in marketing, it's usually those lines. Only 2 left in stock. But in scams, it's something like, "Transfer now, or I'm in big trouble." But the idea is the same. It's to remove your target's time to think. In this case, urgency worked in 2 ways. One, it gave Lishu false clarity. She didn't need to think, so they already laid out the plan. And 2, it acted as a nudge, like a limited time offer, but instead of Gyokyo's bad water, it's emotional manipulation. And by this point, isolation and stress had already worn Lishu down. Even if she knew it was sketchy, she had no space in her mind to resist. Anxiety, guilt, desperation all blend together into obedience. Lishu's paranoia spiked and she lashed out. She ended up hurting Kanan, cutting her cheek, then guilt kicked in. Lishu told Kanan to leave. But just right after Kanan walked away, that familiar voice from the ceiling spoke again. And this time, when Sotae asked her again to come upstairs and meet her in person, Lishu simply couldn't say no. So following Sotae's detailed instructions, Lishu sneaked upstairs, and this time they met. And the first thing Sotae did was hug her from behind. As they talked, Sotae kept repeating the same thing, how much she cared about Lishu, how close they already were, how beautiful her hair and skin were, and also how unfair it was that someone so gentle had suffered so much. Now let's talk the big picture. So what was the point of everything that came before? The savior act, the isolation, the urgency? There were two goals. The first one is cognitive overload. Flood the victim emotionally until there's no room left to think. And the second, emotional investment. Let's make the victim feel special, but also burdened with emotion, so walking away feels like betrayal, like they're the one doing something wrong. And the moment Lishu stepped into the most dangerous part of that tower, the game was already over. So they lured Lishu into the most damaged area of the tower, unstable floors, broken structures, and then frightened her into falling. It was a planned attempt on the virtuous consort's life. So, what happened to Lishu? Since you're already here, I'm guessing spoilers aren't a deal breaker anymore. Lishu survived, but she lost everything. The incident caused massive fallout. Mao got involved, Jinshi got involved, and Basen literally saved Lishu from a fatal fall. According to the novel, he broke both legs, tore out all the fingernails on one hand, and dislocated his shoulder doing it. Well, that explains why Volume 6 cover looks the way it does. But also as punishment, and honestly also as damage control, Lishu was sent back to the nunnery. She lost her title, and maybe that was for the best. Lishu herself knew she wasn't equipped to survive as a high-ranking consort. Her time in the palace was misery layered on top of an existing trauma. Even the emperor had been thinking for a while about releasing her from the court. He thought he could protect Lishu, a girl whom he sometimes even saw like a daughter. But well, protection isn't the same as preparation. Lishu was the perfect victim because she was desperate, and someone saw that desperation not as something to help, but something to exploit. Still, the last thing I want people to walk away thinking is that Lishu was ruined because she was kind. Okay, buddy. Let's stop targeting earnest people for existing. Incompetence isn't kindness. And aside from desperate people, there's also another group that's terrifyingly vulnerable to manipulation. Entitled people. People who believe they deserve special treatment. People who interpret every confirmation as proof they're right. The people whose pride won't let them admit they were played. And that's why stories like Lishu's matter. The story that sits much closer to the real world than we'd like to think.